Welcome to lesson 1 in this series on learning Python for beginners. In this lesson, we will get started with Python and write our first Python expressions. In this lesson, I will talk you through installing Python on your computer, opening and using the Python IDE. I'll tell you what that is. Entering expressions and seeing the results, and using a few of the basic operators. Before we go on to installing Python, let's think about where you're going to use Python. If you're going to use Python in a college or in a school, then it will be already installed on the computer that you use and you won't need to install it. But I do recommend you install Python on your own computer at home so that you can work outside of class time. And you can also install Python on a range of other pieces of technology, on a tablet, a phone, a Raspberry Pi, and other items of technology. Python's quite versatile like that. So in order to install Python on a computer, remember, don't do this at school or college, but on your own computer, go to python.org, or if you forget that, just type Python in the Google search engine and it will come up. And you'll see a screen, and at the top you'll see that toolbar, About, Downloads, Documentation and Community. Those other choices, Documentation and Community, they might be of interest to you later, but for now click on Downloads. And the screen will change, and the big yellow button is the one to click on if you're using an ordinary Windows computer, and just click on that button and it will start to download. If you're using a different kind of computer, for instance an Android device or a Macintosh or something, you can follow the other links. If you click on the big yellow button, you'll see a download, and when you open that, this is what will open on your screen, and you can just click on Install Now and it will put it on to your computer with all the appropriate startup icons and everything ready to go. So it really is as simple as that. Go to python.org, click on Download, click the most obvious button for download, and it more or less will take care of itself. Once you've installed Python, or if you're working on a computer where Python is already installed, you can now open Python. And an easy way to do that is to click on the Windows button in the bottom left of your screen. The menu of all the software that's available will open. Look down that menu to find Python, click on that, and you'll find a range of choices, and the top one there, you can see it on the screen, is IDLE. IDLE is the IDE for Python. IDE stands for the Integrated Development Environment. That means software that lets you write Python expressions and Python programs and run the programs and see the result. So let's open IDLE and find out what we see next. When we run IDLE, we'll see a window open on the screen looking a bit like the one you can see here. And this window is called the Python shell. The Python shell is where you can enter expressions and commands one at a time and see the result immediately, which is really convenient when you're learning Python. So let's explore using the Python shell. In the Python shell, you can enter what we call expressions. Expressions are the basic building blocks of a programming language. An expression, as the name implies, expresses a value. The computer will read the expression that you type in, evaluate it, that is, work out its value, and in the shell it will display the value of the expression. So you can see here, I've entered three expressions. I've entered a string, what we call a string, the words "this is Python" in quote marks, and the computer has repeated back "this is Python." I've typed 1, 2, 3, and the computer has repeated back the value of that expression, 123, and the same 99.9. So not very exciting so far. The first of those expressions was what we call a string expression. A string expression is any set of characters or text enclosed in quote marks. You can use double or single quote marks. I always use double, but it doesn't matter. And the computer will evaluate the literal content of whatever is inside those quote marks and just repeat it back to you. A numerical expression is slightly different. A numerical expression is any number. It can be a number that includes a decimal point or not, or it can be any expression that represents a number, such as 3 plus 6 or something like that. The computer will evaluate that expression and show its numerical value. So here's an example of the difference between a numerical expression and a string expression. In the first example, 3 plus 5, I haven't put any quote marks. So that tells the computer I want it to treat that expression as a numerical expression. And it's evaluated 3 plus 5, the value of that is 8, and so it's shown me 8. In the next example, I've typed 3 plus 5 in quote marks, and that tells the computer to treat it as a string, and so the computer has just printed out the string. So if you've got the Python shell open on your computer, try typing those expressions and other expressions of that kind and see what you see. 3 plus 5 is an arithmetic expression, and it uses what we call an arithmetic operator. There are several of these, but I've shown the 4 most frequently used on the screen: plus, minus, multiply, and divide. And by using those, we can build up all kinds of numerical expressions. When the computer's evaluating the numerical expression, it will use precedence. Precedence means it works out the result of some of the operators before others. So that top expression, 99 plus 6 times 2, the computer works out 6 times 2 first, 12, then adds it to 99 to give the answer 111. But in the second expression, I've put brackets around 99 plus 6, so the computer works that out first, 105, and then multiplies the result by 2, 210. So the computer always does the expression, any part of the expression that's in brackets is evaluated first, then any multiplication and division, and then finally any remaining addition and subtraction. You can also use some of the same operators with strings, and look what happens. So if I have string A and B and I join them with a plus operator, it turns them into a larger string AB. Or in my second expression here, I've taken the letter A and multiplied it by 5, and that gives me a string which is 5 A's in a row. So the same operator has a different effect according to whether I'm using it with numerical or string expressions. There are some other operators that we haven't looked at yet: 2 stars, 2 divide signs, and a percent sign. I'm not going to tell you what they do, so that's your task to try to find that out before the next lesson. Here's a bit of a clue: the percent sign does not work out percents. So Your task now is to make sure that Python is on the computer that you're going to use, to try out some different expressions using the arithmetic operators with numbers and with strings. Work out exactly what happens when you use different operators with strings. Some of them you can't use at all, you just get an error. And those 3 extra operators that I showed you, 2 stars, 2 divide signs, and the percent sign. See if you can explore and find out what those operators do. I'll give you the answers in the next lesson. Okay, so well done. Make sure you've got Python installed. Go back through this again once you have Python installed and make sure you've done all the activities. And I'll see you in the next lesson.